1803, London. A death row prisoner's corpse, under everyone's watchful eyes, suddenly opens its eyes. This is not a horror novel, but an anatomical scene at the Royal College of Surgeons. Scientist Giovanni Aldini has just connected electrodes to the corpse of the condemned man Foster. Electric current passes through the dead man's jaw. Facial muscles contort. One eye suddenly opens. When the electrodes touch the torso, he even waves his arms, as if struggling to wake from the abyss of death. Aldini is no charlatan. As the nephew of anatomist Galvani, he inherited not only his uncle's mantle, but also a earth-shattering ambition to use electricity to knock open death's forbidden door. More than 10 years ago, his uncle on the dissection table accidentally discovered electric current could make dead frog legs suddenly convulse. He proposed the animal electricity hypothesis. Now the nephew wants to complete this ultimate experiment on human corpses. Although this performance failed to revive the death row prisoner, he truly tore open the black curtain that had shrouded death for thousands of years. He announced to the world that death, perhaps, is not the ultimate judgment of souls drifting away, but a physical process that can be observed, intervened, and even briefly reversed. What this discovery brought was the 19th century's deepest nightmare. Since the dead could be awakened by electric shock, might doctors misjudge death? The fear of premature burial spread like a plague. Craftsmen racked their brains to invent an unimaginable device: the safety coffin. They equipped coffins with air tubes, ladders, and a rope connecting the corpse's wrist to a bell on the ground. The logic was simple. In case you wake up underground, a gentle pull could send a final cry for help to the world above. This seemingly absurd invention precisely captured the dilemma of that era. The boundary between life and death was so blurred, and the medical revolution of the 20th century completely scrambled this boundary. In 1960, modern cardiopulmonary resuscitation was formally established. Through external chest compressions, people whose hearts had stopped could be pulled back from death's threshold. Soon after, external defibrillators made scenes of resurrection repeatedly play out in hospitals. Death was no longer an ironclad verdict, but a medical emergency state that could be intervened. But the real challenge then arose. The invention of ventilators created an unprecedented form of life. The patient's brain function had been completely lost, but machines could drive the heart to keep beating. So was he still alive? In 1967, the world's first heart transplant surgery pushed this question to the edge of an ethical cliff. To transplant a healthy heart, it must first be made to stop beating. This forced the medical community to answer, what is death? The following year, Harvard Medical School gave an epic-making answer: brain death. When brain function suffers irreversible permanent loss, even if the heart and lungs are still functioning, it should be considered legal death. The determination of death, for the first time, moved from the warm heart to the silent brain. But the real battlefield was at an even deeper microscopic level. In the early 20th century, Nobel Prize winner Carrel claimed he had cultured a piece of chicken embryo heart tissue in vitro for over 30 years, far exceeding the normal lifespan of chickens. This immortal chicken heart made people believe cells were essentially immortal. Aging was only due to environmental deterioration. However, myths are ultimately myths. In 1961, microbiologist Hayflick discovered normal human cells, after dividing about 50 times, would automatically stop. This Hayflick limit announced life from the beginning had a built-in countdown. So, what is this countdown device? The answer lies at the ends of chromosomes. Scientists discovered at both ends of chromosomes there are protective sequences called telomeres. Each time a cell divides, telomeres wear away and shorten a bit, like the plastic caps on both ends of shoelaces. When telomeres become too short to protect chromosomes anymore, cells stop dividing and move toward death. But nature always has exceptions. Cancer cells seem to have broken free from this shackle. Most cancer cells have activated a substance called telomerase, constantly repairing worn telomeres, thus gaining the ability of immortality. In 1951, African-American woman Lax died of cervical cancer. Doctors, without her knowledge, took her cancer cell tissue for cultivation. Unexpectedly, these cells in the laboratory showed unprecedented vitality. They could divide infinitely, never aging. This became humanity's first immortal cell line, HeLa cells. Over 70 years, they were shipped to laboratories worldwide, making immortal contributions to polio vaccines, genetic mapping, and even COVID research. Although Lax died, her cells gained immortality in another form. Even more amazing is, death for life is not always a bad thing. In 1972, scientists discovered a kind of cell actively performing programmed suicide ritual and poetically named it apoptosis. This was not an accident, but part of life's design blueprint. In embryonic development, it is the orderly apoptosis of cells between fingers that carves out our flexible 5 fingers. The tadpole's tail also disappears through massive cell apoptosis, finally transforming into a frog. Subsequently, scientists in nematodes, these tiny organisms, found the genetic switches controlling this self-destruct program, and they are strikingly similar to homologous genes in humans. When scientists could manipulate like clockmakers the life clocks of cells, an ancient thought surfaced again: can we artificially delay aging, or even defeat death? In 1993, Cynthia Kenyon, by changing one gene in nematodes, doubled their lifespan. This discovery ignited the spark of modern anti-aging research. From caloric restriction to targeted drugs, scientists discovered aging is not an unshakable iron law that can be intervened. This wave even attracted Silicon Valley's tech giants. They invested huge sums to establish companies trying to use the approach of cracking software to crack death. More radical gamblers cast their eyes toward the future. In 1967, psychology professor Bedford, after dying of cancer, became the world's first person to be cryogenically preserved. His body was injected with antifreeze, submerged in liquid nitrogen tanks, at -196 degrees Celsius, waiting for a distant day of resurrection, betting that the speed of human technological progress can outrun the body's slow decay in low temperatures, while others envision even further. Since flesh will ultimately decay, why not completely scan consciousness and memory, upload them to the cloud, achieving digital immortality? With the development of the times, humanity's means of fighting death change with each passing day, but we seem to have overlooked a more fundamental question: why do humans want to fight death? We always say death is evolution's engine, making space and resources for new generations. But reviewing history, every great leap of humanity was a defiant challenge to natural laws. From using fire, farming, deciphering genes, to space programs, we became who we are, precisely because we are not satisfied with nature's boundaries. We use all our wisdom to extend life's length, perhaps not from fear of nothingness, but from a desire for infinite possibilities. When our ancestors first looked up at the stars, that curiosity to transcend themselves is no different from today's desire to edit aging and upload consciousness. Defeating death, perhaps, is not the end of the story, but humanity as a species, breaking free from biology's cradle, the true beginning of the next civilization. But regardless of which era, for each individual, we face not the question of why to live, but how to live. We are not walking toward death, we ourselves contain death. So death gives life boundaries, and within boundaries, we have our stories and landscapes that transcend life and death.